Just before we move on, I'd just like to thank people for your support for Ruth and I over the last few days as to the news of our separation, and your support from both of us is very much appreciated.
For many years, Eamonn Holmes and Ruth Langsford were seen as one of the strongest and most familiar couples on British television. To viewers at home, they were more than just presenters. They were a daily presence, a symbol of stability, warmth, and partnership. Whether hosting morning shows or appearing in interviews, they often came across as relaxed, supportive, and deeply connected. Their relationship felt real, not staged, and that was part of why audiences trusted them. So when news broke in May 2024 that they had decided to separate, the reaction was immediate and emotional. Many people felt genuinely saddened, as if something dependable had quietly slipped away. The announcement itself was short and carefully worded. In a joint statement, Eamonn Holmes and Ruth Langsford confirmed that they were going their separate ways after many years together. They made it clear that the decision was mutual and respectful. No blame was placed and no personal details were shared. The message focused on dignity, privacy, and family. On the surface, it sounded calm and controlled, but the lack of explanation left many unanswered questions. When a couple that visible chooses silence, the silence itself becomes loud. Fans, media outlets, and commentators began to speculate, not because of drama, but because the relationship had felt so solid for so long. Eamonn and Ruth's story did not begin in private. From the very start, it unfolded in public view. They met in the late 1990s while working in television, and their connection quickly became clear. Their on-screen chemistry stood out. It wasn't forced or overly polished. Instead, it felt natural, sometimes playful, sometimes tense, but always honest. Viewers saw disagreements, jokes, and moments of affection that felt genuine. Over time, this honesty became their brand. They were simply being themselves, and people related to that. As their careers grew, so did their relationship. They became regular faces on ITV's This Morning, a show watched by millions. For years, they shared the screen as both colleagues and partners. That kind of working relationship is not easy. Spending so much time together, both professionally and personally, can put pressure on even the strongest bonds. Yet for Eamonn and Ruth, it seemed to work. They spoke openly in interviews about the challenges of balancing work and marriage, but they also spoke about respect and teamwork. Many viewers admired them for managing both. Their marriage in 2010 felt like a natural step. By that time, they had already been together for over a decade. The wedding was widely covered and warmly received by the public. It felt less like celebrity news and more like a shared celebration. People had watched their relationship grow over the years, so the marriage felt earned. After that, they continued to work together, appearing comfortable and united. Even when careers changed or shows ended, their partnership remained a constant. Behind the scenes, however, life was not always easy. Eamonn Holmes, in particular, faced serious health challenges over the years. He spoke openly about chronic pain, mobility issues, and surgeries that affected his daily life. These struggles were not hidden, but they were often discussed with humor or resilience. Still, long-term health problems can take a heavy toll, not just on the person experiencing them, but also on their partner. Supporting someone through pain and limitation requires strength, patience, and emotional energy. While neither Eamonn nor Ruth publicly blamed health issues for their separation, it is impossible to ignore how demanding those years must have been. When the separation was confirmed in May 2024, many people noticed how carefully both sides handled it. There were no angry statements, no interviews filled with accusations, and no social media drama. This quiet approach suggested maturity, but it also hinted at deep complexity. Relationships that last nearly 3 decades do not simply end overnight. They change slowly, often through small shifts that are invisible to outsiders. What viewers saw on screen was only a fraction of the full picture. The public reaction reflected how deeply people had connected to them. Messages of support flooded social media. Fans shared memories of watching them over the years, often during important moments in their own lives. It enters people's homes during routines, breakfast, and quiet moments. Presenters become familiar voices, almost like extended family. Losing a familiar couple can feel strangely personal, even though the viewers never truly knew them. This explains why the separation felt more emotional than most celebrity breakups. Despite the sadness, many also respected the way Eamonn and Ruth handled the announcement. By choosing privacy, they reminded the public that not everything needs to be explained. Still, curiosity remained. When public figures who are known for openness suddenly become guarded, it naturally leads to questions. Was the separation peaceful or painful? Was it a slow drifting apart, or was there a deeper emotional rupture? At first, there were no answers. For several weeks, Eamonn Holmes remained largely silent. He did not give interviews explaining the breakup. He did not post emotional messages online. This silence contrasted with his usual public confidence and talkative nature. For someone known for speaking his mind, saying nothing at all suggested that the situation was deeply affecting him. Silence, in this case, did not signal strength. It signaled struggle. Behind that silence, Eamonn was facing a major emotional shift. After 27 years together, the end of the relationship meant more than the loss of a marriage. It meant the loss of routine, partnership, and a shared identity built over decades. When people have lived so much of their adult lives with one person, separation can feel disorienting. Everyday habits change, familiar support disappears, even simple decisions can suddenly feel heavy. For someone also dealing with physical pain and health concerns, this emotional loss becomes even harder to manage. Ruth Langsford, on the other hand, appeared more composed in her early public appearances after the separation. When she spoke, she focused on strength, reflection, and moving forward. Her tone suggested acceptance and resilience. This difference in public response did not mean that one person cared more or less than the other. People process grief differently. Some speak, some stay silent. Some look ahead quickly, while others remain stuck in the moment. The contrast simply highlighted how differently the separation was affecting each of them. As the weeks passed, it became clear that this was not just the end of a marriage, but the end of a shared public chapter. For years, Eamonn and Ruth had been presented as a unit. Now they were being seen separately, both literally and emotionally. Viewers were no longer watching a couple navigate life together, but two individuals facing change in their own ways. At this stage, the public still did not fully understand how deeply the separation was affecting Eamonn Holmes. That understanding would only come later, when he finally chose to speak. When he did, his words would reveal not anger or blame, but something far more unsettling: vulnerability, uncertainty, and emotional pain. The calm public image that had surrounded him for decades was about to crack, showing the human cost behind the headlines. By late June 2024, the silence surrounding Eamonn Holmes finally broke. For weeks after the separation announcement, he had avoided discussing the end of his marriage in public. Many assumed this was a deliberate choice, a way to protect privacy and avoid unnecessary attention. But when Eamonn appeared at the Trick Awards in London on June 26th, it became clear that his silence had not come from strength or distance. It came from emotional difficulty. What he said that night would quietly reshape how many people understood the breakup. The Trick Awards are usually a relaxed industry event, filled with smiles, jokes, and light conversation. Eamonn Holmes had attended many times before, often appearing confident, humorous, and at ease. This time, however, his presence felt different. Observers noticed that he looked tired, both physically and emotionally. When journalists asked how he was coping with the separation from Ruth Langsford, his response was short, honest, and deeply human. "I'm not okay," he said. "This is not a good time at all." Those few words carried more weight than any long explanation could have. They were not dramatic, they were not angry, they were simply true. In a world where public figures often rely on rehearsed phrases and careful messaging, Eamonn's response stood out for its raw honesty. He did not try to soften the pain or hide behind polite language. He admitted, plainly, that he was struggling. For many fans, this moment was heartbreaking. Eamonn Holmes had built a career on confidence and quick wit. He was known for strong opinions and sharp commentary. Seeing him admit vulnerability so openly felt unexpected. It confirmed what many had quietly suspected since the separation was announced. This was not an easy or painless ending. It was deeply upsetting, especially for him. As he continued speaking, Eamonn made it clear that the breakdown of his 27-year relationship with Ruth Langsford had taken a serious emotional toll. He described feeling unsettled and uncertain about the future. One of his most striking admissions was that he did not know whether he and Ruth would be able to remain friends. For a couple so closely linked by work, family, and shared history, that uncertainty felt significant. It suggested that the separation had not simply changed their romantic relationship, but had shaken the foundation of their entire connection. This admission resonated strongly with the public. For years, Eamonn and Ruth had represented teamwork and closeness. They had worked side by side, supported each other through career changes, and spoken openly about mutual respect. The idea that even friendship might be difficult after the separation made the situation feel far more serious and painful than the calm joint statement had initially suggested. Eamonn's comments also highlighted the emotional confusion that often follows the end of a long-term relationship. After nearly 3 decades together, it is not easy to redefine boundaries or imagine a future without daily contact. Even when a separation is mutual, it can still feel like a loss of identity. Much of Eamonn's adult life had been shared with Ruth. Losing that partnership meant adjusting to a completely new emotional reality. What made this moment even more powerful was how it contrasted with Ruth Langsford's public response. In her own appearances after the separation, Ruth spoke with a sense of calm and forward focus. She acknowledged the difficulty of change, but emphasized strength, reflection, and personal growth. Her tone suggested acceptance and resilience. She did not dwell on pain in public, choosing instead to look ahead. This difference in tone led to widespread discussion, but it is important to understand it carefully. People grieve and process change in different ways. Ruth's calm did not mean she was unaffected, just as Eamonn's openness did not mean he was weaker. They were simply responding to the same situation from different emotional places. While Ruth appeared to be focused on stability and moving forward, Eamonn seemed to be caught in the immediate emotional aftermath. Eamonn's vulnerability challenged common expectations of public figures, especially men of his generation. There is often pressure to appear strong, controlled, and unaffected, even during personal crises. By admitting that he was not coping well, Eamonn broke away from that expectation. His honesty made him more relatable, but it also exposed the depth of his pain. He did not offer solutions or reassurance. He simply shared how difficult the moment felt. The media reaction to his comments was intense, but mostly sympathetic. Headlines focused on his honesty, rather than scandal. Many viewers expressed concern and support, praising him for speaking openly about emotional struggle. In a media environment often driven by conflict and blame, this response felt different. It was not about choosing sides. It was about recognizing the human cost of a relationship ending after so many years. Eamonn's words also gave new context to the weeks of silence that had followed the separation announcement. Rather than suggesting distance or indifference, the silence now appeared to be a sign of emotional overload. Sometimes, when pain feels overwhelming, speaking becomes difficult. His brief but honest statement at the Trick Awards felt less like a planned announcement, and more like a moment where the truth slipped through. As the evening continued, observers noted that Eamonn did not linger in the spotlight. He did not engage in long interviews or offer further details. His presence felt heavy, as if attending the event itself required significant effort. This impression reinforced the idea that he was navigating not only emotional distress, but also physical challenges that were becoming increasingly difficult to ignore. While much public attention remained focused on the end of his marriage, Eamonn was facing another serious struggle at the same time, one that had been quietly unfolding in the background and would soon become part of the story. His health, already fragile in recent years, had taken a worrying turn. The combination of emotional loss and physical decline was placing enormous strain on him.